Future Seminar Room. My name is John Burke. Welcome to everyone here and to our PebblePad visitors today. We have Shane Sutherland, CEO, co-founder and chief mischief maker of PebblePad. Camera's pointing to Shane now, thank you. Yeah, we have Tony Lavender, who is Chief Development Officer, with PebblePad, and of course lovely Alison Foot, our Australian Director. Thank you. And we are recording.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. At 12.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
I'm not very good at this video conferencing thing, so if I look like I'm doing it wrong, either at this end or your end, if you'd put me right, please. It's almost all right. There's a few more folks here than were here in the morning session, so for those of you who weren't here, I just do want to say again how impressed we are with the work that's gone on at Griffith. 30,000 users in just over 2 years is really incredible. Thank you for your showcase page, because we share it around everywhere we can, all over the world. So most of the Pebble world and the people hoping to join the Pebble world know all about the work that's going on here. So it's so brilliant, basically. So I think this came from Heidi. She said, you're going to be here, Shane, let's make you work really hard for your money. I said, what money? So the question posed was, where does PebblePad fit into the and the truth is I don't really know. Because I think it's going to be different in every institution. It's going to be different over time. But I'm going to try to give some in fact, you just check. Can you hear okay at your end? Over there, and can you put your hand up? Oh, you can see nodding. Brilliant. Thank you. Fabulous. So I don't really know. But what I'm going to do is for the next hour, share just a few random thoughts, and maybe I'll strike 1 or 2 nuggets. I do hope I don't upset anybody along the way, because I don't know. There's the situation here. I don't really know about all of your tools. So this will be very much a sort of Pebble-centric view of how PebblePad fits in the VLE. I was going to say, I've explained this.
Excuse Shane, could Gold mute their mic, please? Yeah.
Someone's down.
Yeah, we're getting feedback.
So I was going to say, with this slide, I'll be trying to explain how I think PebblePad fits in over the next 4 hours, but then you probably just heard me asking how long the session can go from here, so we do know it's only about an hour. So what is the VLE? Well, in the UK, the VLE actually is analogous with the LMS. So we use the term virtual learning environment to describe just the LMS. Although for 12 years, or 12 years ago, there were projects in the UK. In fact, my wife was the program manager for GISC, looking at the digital or distributed learning environment projects that different universities were looking at that point. But I think VLE sort of really sounds like the Ingle. Is anyone familiar with the Ingle? No? Okay. So the Ingle, I think that's how you say it, is the next generation digital learning environment. So there's been 2 big projects, notable projects, EduCause in America, and more recently GISC in the UK, wondering what the Ingle looks like. And what EduCause thought was this. And this. So, in effect, a bunch of interconnected tools and communities organising and managing learning and assessment through these tools. The problem is the wiring gets a bit complex, and I don't think the wiring is up to speed just yet. Some of you who, I guess, have been to some of our talks before or are more involved in some of the technical aspects of this, know that standards like LTI were meant to allow learning systems to talk to each other, so it's a learning tools interoperability standard, and it's never really lived up to expectation. LTI 2 was sort of launched. We were LTI 2 compliant, and then got pulled because some of the big vendors didn't like some of the ways in which it operated. I think there's a flaw with LTI anyway, because in terms of that angle, the model really is that the LMS is the centre of the universe, and which is, accurate in a way in most institutions. And the LTI allows people to sort of spring out of the LMS to do a little activity, maybe a quiz or to watch a video, or particularly in North America to read an electronic textbook that they can subscribe to, and then they kind of pop back into the LMS. There are more and more courses where, if I just use PebblePad as an example, where PebblePad is used more often by some students than the LMS. But we don't have any way to go from PebblePad to the LMS. LTI supports, well, that's not quite true. The implementation of LTI supports one-way traffic. So you go from the LMS to something else. We'd love you to be able to build workbooks where you kind of write a bit of stuff and you say, now go and watch this video in the LMS, or go and read this content, or do something in the LMS and then come back here. And we're not able to do that. And it's partly because LTI wasn't conceived that way, but it's also because the big LMS vendors, it's maybe not in their interest. And we can't apply any pressure on that. You have to apply pressure. You as institutions have to say, hey, in your case, Blackboard, we'd really like to be able to do this thing. Can you help us with it? So certainly it's the case at the moment that the wiring isn't quite good enough. Let's try that and see if that brings it back to life. Why the angle? I guess a follow-on question, what's wrong with the LMS? I have to kind of explain this. There was a chap called David Eddy, wonderful guy, early days at Sheffield Hallam University, used PebblePad, had all sorts of battles institutionally, persevered, bless him. He wrote a blog post once where he compared Blackboard to Darth Vader, and PebblePad was Yoda. Some people liked it, and some people didn't. But this is kind of Educore's position on the LMS. Now, I think there are sort of some authors talk about 3 generations of the LMS, and Gen 3 is not quite like this. Sometimes Gen 3 LMS is more like this because of how it's set up at the institution, rather because of how it's actually built. But as a kind of gross generalisation, I think the issue with LMSs is they've tended to be course and content centric. And so, the Educore's report, authors go on to say, and the big bracket is my kind of edition, that the new model needs to be much more learning centred. And as I said in the morning session, it kind of aligns with what we have been observing. That's not quote-worthy, because it's sort of made up by me. But it's a sort of reflection, I think, of the conversations we have in different institutions around the globe.
I can see someone taking this.
Yeah.
Watching it in their paper, putting that on the bottom.
So it is that thing about, in a way, we're moving away from just content acquisition and actually being more interested in students' ability to apply that knowledge in context. I'm not sure if it's this exact one, because I've got several versions of this, but when I was here in 2016, it sounds like a long time ago. It sounds like an age, but it seems to me 5 minutes ago since we're in that big theatre. And this was a model that came out, I think, around about 2011. We started using it, maybe earlier than that, actually. And we were trying to characterise how PebblePad fitted in between. It's called, in fact, the whole premise of this was called the space in the middle. And traditionally, there are these tools in the sort of yellow segment, which are institutional tools, very much managed by the institution, content released under control to students. And then you have the whole PLE thing on the far side. And I've used PLE, and that's, it's a term which, it doesn't have a lot of currency right now. For 5-6 years ago, lots of people were talking about the PLE. You had people like Scott Wilson, who were very technical, talking about how the PLE was almost like a purposeful mashup of tools, little bits of lines of code which made one thing do something else. Anyone familiar with if this then that? Yeah, so if this then that was a kind of similar thing. You took small bits of code and made tools kind of work together, but they demanded quite a bit of technical expertise. Other people like Graham Atwell said, well, actually, the personal learning environment is just a collection of tools that people use for learning. It's not necessarily a purposeful aggregation. They might go to YouTube every now and again to learn how to dance a new salsa step, or they might, whatever it may be. But anyway, we weren't ever a personal learning environment. In fact, we kind of were. We had to separate ourselves from what that was in one definition of it. So we called ourselves this personal learning space. And again, bits of this I apologise for those folks who were here earlier. I recently wrote a blog article, well, it turned into a book because it was longer than it was meant to be, about how our thinking about PebblePad has changed over time. And we now really think about ourselves as a learning journey platform. And there are all sorts of reasons behind that, which if I've got the next slide right, we've got discussed in a booklet, which is available for free download from our website. We've left some here, hard copy ones. So I guess it begs the question, not where does PebblePad, where does PebblePad fit in the VLE, but where does a learning journey platform fit in the VLE? And returning to what I said at the beginning, I don't know, but I'll try and explore some possible avenues. Before I do that, a cautionary tale. This is from Michael Felstein. And we get this all the time. In a way, this part of what we discussed again this morning. And I'll come back to this in a bit. But I thought I would try and do a sort of schematic. I desperately was searching on my laptop for I've got most old presentations I've done in the past. I did a presentation once at the European Portfolio and Identity Conference, and it was called something like On Llamas, Gazelles and Unicorns. And I have no idea why I called the presentation. I think it was just, maybe it'll get accepted if there's a stupid title. It did, it got accepted. And it was it was a schematic. I spent ages and ages on talking about how PebblePad fitted into the ecosystem. And I wish I could find it, because I could kind of compare, well, they would have saved me hours at the airport drawing a new model like yesterday. and B, like a compare and contrast. So here's a simplified, much simplified schematic. And sort of down here, sort of telling you what these things are. So we have the kind of identity management system. Not all institutions have that. We have things like or akin to Active Directory. We have the student management system. And they're often, in a way, the proxy device, is that the right way of saying it? The LMS or the placement management system. Although sometimes there's also direct access for people to access PebblePad. But also, particularly from group information that's held in the LMS, or the LMS, sorry, good lord. Group information held by the LMS, sometimes also by Active Directory, and it can share that with our data island. You can access that directly. And I wonder if in the future, if I had this third group of people, sort of external examiners, with some courses have huge numbers of them, and I wonder, what's yours called? Is it In Place? Sonia. So I wonder if in the future, an integration we ought to be looking at is Sonia, which really manages where people are, who's looking after them, and integrate that with Atlas. Because one of the things that sometimes people complain about is, it's raining. I'm in Queensland, it's raining. Is they say, well, look, the way things work in Atlas, we might put an external assessor with these students, but then that external assessor moves, and we have to go to every group where that student is and kind of replace that person. Well, if that's managed by something like Sonia, and we have an integration with Atlas, it's just managed in one place and it kind of synchronises in the same way as our group synchronise with the LMS right now. And largely, in fact, if I add this bit in, grades bit as well, things go to Atlas, get assessed, and grades go back to the SMS. Often the LMS is a proxy for that as well, so we send them back to the LMS. But in essence, the student management system is the key source is the true source of information, for at least most universities. Because that's where information is agreed by the subject board or the award board or whatever mechanisms you use here. So in a way, that's all the kind of admin side of things. How people, what their affiliations look like, whether they're allowed access, some role information, and that all allows them access to PebblePad and to Atlas. And then on this side, the kind of learning side, if you like, we've got what I'm calling things that leave a trace. Distributed file stores and complementary tools. And what they kind of do is add things to or offer things to the students' asset store, so they don't have to create things in PebblePad. And I'm going to talk about these in a bit more detail in a moment. Because that sort of makes sense of it. I mean, in a way, you can't argue because you don't know what's in the complementary tools, you don't know what's in some of these other ones. But that's, I think, at the moment, how PebblePad kind of fits into the wider structure. I think one of the things that would be really nice, I talked about the limitations of LTI, and we've done some work. We did some work for the, I'm not sure what word goes before this, before the slightly delayed Blackboard Ultra rollout, which moved away from the Blackboard block that we use to having direct integrations between PebblePad and Blackboard. Now the block is still in place for existing courses, but new courses will be able to use this direct integration. But what would be really nice would be if that direct integration, for example, allowed us to overcome the problem we have now, which is we can only pass single grades from Atlas to Blackboard, and that's a limitation for a number of people. And we're building a grade manager in PebblePad, which allows you to put multiple grades in. But what would we really need, I think, is that an institution or even a course level could say, and you know how part of this works right now. Am I allowed to point at it? I was going to mark it down as a bad teacher. the LMS says, or in the LMS you can say, create me a Atlas course, and it does that, and it sends all the users across and sends the teachers across, and then allows you when you grade work to pass the grade path. Well, wouldn't it be nice if go too quickly, if in Atlas you could say, when I grade work in Atlas, show me the grade book for the Blackboard course I'm associated with. So you could just put the grades straight in. You could put as many grades as you wanted in there. So I think that's something we need, and we've got a meeting at 3 o'clock sometime today to chat about what future integrations might look like with Blackboard in particular. I think there's another issue with grades. Is again, the direction of travel is one way. So you mark a thing in Atlas, and we'll go back, let's confuse the situation. You mark a thing in Atlas, and you release the grade, and the grade goes here to the LMS, and then goes from the LMS to the SMS. We had a tool, it's not quite true we had a tool, we built a sort of prototype tool called Flourish. And it really was to test some ideas, but also to test the way we were going to build new PebblePad, the HTML5 version. But what Flourish is a kind of personal tutoring, coaching, mentoring space, where students get to see all of their grades and all of their feedback. And if you've got a personal tutor or advisor, you can invite them into your feedback timeline, and you can start to make sense of your feedback. And because they can use templates from Plus, you could have things that said, look across 3 of your assignments and find disparate grades and talk about why they might be disparate, or find an opportunity where or find an example of where you had feedback and you've done something to improve upon that feedback. So you can have all sorts of developmental activities happening in Flourish. But the only grades we can show in here at the moment are the grades that came from Atlas. And it'd be really, really nice if those grade services became multi-directional. We could pass grades through to the SMS, but we've got grades back as well. Even marked as provisional, because I think if they're coming from the SMS, they're likely to be provisional until the reward will happen. Does that sort of make sense? Okay. So that's kind of how I think the schematic looks, with some examples of how it could look. And what I'm going to do now is move on and talk about some of these things here. So first of all, things that leave a trace. And what I mean by this is other tools or platforms that when you do something, leave a trace. There's an output, there's a score, or there's some kind of transcript or table. So I think falling into this camp, and I'm sure I've missed a bunch, but these are kind of indicative in a way. Clickers, does everyone know what I mean by clickers? The classroom response system. I think discipline-specific tools, so music composition tool that creates kind of link files that talk about, the music in a little WAV file and stuff. If you had a large course here doing lots of stuff, and there's a discipline-specific tool, the ability to have integration, so it stops you having to download something and then re-upload it to PebblePad, where you can just kind of say, send that, because we've got 30,000 users here using PebblePad. It seems to make sense for some of those, whether of big courses, to say, add a button somewhere that says, save that to my PebblePad. We have some services which allow you to do that already. You click a button, save the PebblePad, and even allow you to enforce a kind of template that says, why are you saving this thing? What does it demonstrate? What aspect of your learning, or which graduate attribute? You're in charge of the questions, but that's the kind of thing you can do. Quizzes would be another example of that, I think. Now, the way LTI works, keeping back to LTI, it allows you to launch out of the LMS and do a quiz somewhere, and then it sends back a score to the LMS. When we did the LTI 2 thing, we go back another step. LTI works like this. It has a tool called, it has a version for a platform called a consumer, and it has a thing called a tool. And consumer is normally like something like Blackboard. And the consumer says, hey, little tool thing up here, quiz, I've got someone coming through. It doesn't necessarily say who you are, there's some controls around that. And you do the quiz, and the quiz says, hey, Blackboard, that person you sent through, here's the score. Thank God. What we really want is for the LMS to be a tool and a consumer. So we can say, hey, Blackboard, we've got someone coming through. At the moment, we did that work, but we did like 97.5%, roughly, of that work. But it's kind of useless to us unless we have something to talk to. But what we could do is talk to the other tools. So we can be a tool and a consumer. And you could, for example, in a workbook, make a link to a quiz. And they go off and do the quiz, and the score comes back. The problem with the score coming back is where does it come back to? Because we don't have a grade. Now, some of our customers, like University of Plymouth, I think this actually is an Australian thing, H5P. Yeah, so everybody get H5P quizzes in their workbooks and stuff. But again, the score has nowhere to go because there's nowhere for it to host. And that, Martin Feldstein quote I showed earlier, the cautionary tale, the red thing with the bike, like keep getting this feature creep. He said, you know you've got it terribly wrong when you find yourself building a grade centre. Because it's like building on quicksand. As soon as you get a couple of courses, someone wants the next, it's mad. So I don't know how we overcome that, how we get a grade back to PebblePad that's useful, but without getting into all of that nonsense about grade allocation and, something of this range equals this alphanumeric score and all of that sort of stuff, and weightings, and you can imagine how complicated it is. And then there's something I think about progress or a course. Particularly in corporate learning, your brilliance is measured on the fact you got 82% of the way through some health and safety thing that someone says to you. But again, it's a kind of transcript, it's a thing that leaves a trace. If there are things here that students have to work their way through, maybe, I'm making this up in a way, the flight simulation thing, maybe there's a certain number of skills you have to demonstrate. And at the end, it knows what you've done. If there's a way of clicking a button, and it says, right, let's ship that off to PebblePad. And then activities I've undertaken, and I'll talk about this in a bit more detail in a minute. So, I want to go back to click. You can't find a picture of clickers on the internet. So, here's my kind of approximation of clickers. Now, the thing I said about clickers was, I asked all of you a question about how much you understood the lesson or what direction you should go in. We do a response. Normally, I think, that information is helpful to the instructor. The instructor then says, okay, based on your responses, I realise I have to do X, Y, or Z. So it seemed to me, in my Pebble-centric view of the world, not thinking of technical integrations, but just achieving the same end as a clicker. But let me just do a check. If you haven't got some kind of smart device with you right now, can you put your hand up? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's not too bad. Oh yeah, Gold Coast, folks. How many of you at the Gold Coast have not got some kind of smart device with you? A smartphone, iPad, computer, Android thing? Okay, no one. So, what I was thinking was, I need to pop out of here a moment. So, I'll slide 19. How about if, in fact I'll go straight over here, how about if you created a template which you've added to your class workspace and you had it auto-submit, and the template did something like this, assuming this was a topic I've been teaching, which of these principles, blah blah blah, Now, I think I got a bit carried away because I started thinking teaching. I added other questions like briefly describe. I didn't quite know the answers, as you can see. But maybe instead of a clicker thing, and maybe I'm behind the times on clickers, I don't know. You ask every student at the start of a class or at the end of a class, if you get some foundation, idea of their foundation knowledge, or at the end of the class haven't they understood. And they sit there and they fill it in. And as a teacher, what I've done here as well is anonymised the participants, so that then I can pull up a report and start to see the responses straight away in class. And I can say, okay, so somebody thought that it was because of the way to achieve blah 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 is investment in improved productivity. What would make any of you think that might be a thing about person? So I was just wondering whether that's a kind of viable alternative to, or at least if not a stepping stone to getting clicker. Are clickers widely used here?
They were included in the Windows 10.
Yeah, I wander around the world, not randomly, and I find boxes and boxes of clickers in people's offices. Anywho, that was just an idea that maybe you could say, head of every class, let's just stop. Let's pause and make sense of what we've just done. And because you fill a template in, you as a learner have got a record of this, and I, the instructor, have got some value from this as well. So let's go back to here. So not a technical integration in a way, a kind of a intellectual or pedagogical kind of connection. And then the other thing that leaves a trace is activities I've undertaken. And this kind of links a little bit to other things I've talked about. But at La Trobe University, am I allowed to mention competing universities? No, they're not competing, are they? Because you know, when this gets published, it's not going to get like public, is it? I've lost my plot now because I'm getting in trouble. Oh, they have an app. They have an excellent career development app. And you can do activities on the app, and then when you're finished, you click a button and it saves that thing. It's not a PebblePad app, it's wired into PebblePad. PebblePad has a little API which listens for things. In fact, how it works is there's a corresponding template built into PebblePad, and the code for the template is kind of is told to the app. And then when they do this thing, they save it, and it goes into PebblePad as a template with all the things they've done. University of Liverpool, when they have students doing things for their transcript, for their enhanced transcript. If they undertake an activity as someone in the Students' Guild, or they run a sports team, or they do something that the university recognises, periodically the database of activities is sort of fired off the PebblePad. And templates are created in the accounts of the users who've undertaken those activities. And it's a sort of formal description of the things the students have done as validated by the university, non-editable, and then some fields underneath that say, what did you learn from this? Is there any additional evidence you can bring to bear on it? I'm not quite sure what the questions are, but that's how that works. And that exists right now. That API allows you to do those kind of things. And you can talk to our team, through Alison, I guess, and we can help you with that. That was they're not just 3 people doing this thing. No, it has to be a sort of scale in a way.
Are you doing things like that in terms of like HEA?
Well, the HEA thing is different because what happens is if you were typically in the UK, the HEA is a higher education academy. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And for people who are undertaking their fellowship, most universities in the UK will run a course called a PG CAP, Postgraduate Certificate in Academic Practice, and the PG CAP itself is accredited by the HEA, so you pass your PG CAP, you get your fellowship. Although a lot of people do it independently as well by independent portfolio assessment. Yeah. But there's no kind of way of sending, there's a different thing in the way to send your portfolio to the academy. They like it on parchment with scribbles and stuff. So then, moving on from things that leave a trace to distributed file stores. I mean, you know already that users can say to PebblePad, hey, I've got stuff in my Dropbox. When I go to my asset store, please show me my Dropbox stuff in there so I can make links to it. So we do that. And then, in a way, these are, what I was thinking, these are personal file stores. But then there are institutional file stores. And we know some people hook up to their media server, particularly like specialist performance universities. Of course, you can embed content, and I'm going to come back to embed a little bit later as well. And then there's badging, which is, you know, come to where you are at the time, old news, or super new exciting news, or it's just not news. Do you do badging here?
Super new exciting.
Super new exciting. Okay, so I can't remember what I'm going to talk about first. Oh, classroom response. Not classroom response. No, lecture capture. It's really hard to get a picture of lecture capture. But it'd be good to capture a lecture like that, wouldn't it? Yeah, who's got a question? Or anything. So, so I thought with lecture capture, in a way, so you've got all of your videos on the server somewhere, and you can make links for users. You can put them in Blackboard courses. You can't yet put them inside PebblePad because I think you use Echo 360. And I looked on our whitelist, and it doesn't seem to be on our whitelist. I don't know why. It's your fault. But it might be because of something with Echo. I don't know. But I think, you know, again, and you know, earlier on in the earlier, sorry, for some of you will know in the earlier session, Tony said that we did Blackboard Ultra integration. We did that because Griffith is a big, important customer, because you've got 30,000 users. So, if you use Echo 360 extensively, and you shout at us...
We use Echo 360 extensively.
That's not really a shout, that's more of a timid
Can we shout? Every lecture is automatically recorded.
Okay.
So
and then what?
Yeah.
The question then is, and then what? So, what I was wondering again was, if I... there, back over here is, let me go to response. Now, I've used the Kaltura video because we can embed Kaltura videos and a whole pile of other stuff as well. But it seemed to me that we had an Echo 360 integration, rather than just saying, you know, we've got 5,000 hours of lecture stuff recorded, and people going and visiting it, it's passive. I'm not saying it is, I don't know how well they're using it. But if you could embed a captured lecture, or even a portion of it, inside a template, this is not clever stuff, you know, this is, most of you going, yeah, of course, you know. Then you could start to ask some questions. And again, maybe, if this is an auto-submit template, before the next class, you can run a quick report, and you can see who watched it, what the level of understanding was, etc. So, not much different to the thing about the clickers. So there's my thinking about lecture capture, although this does require, you know, I said the clicker thing is just it doesn't require any technical stuff. This one requires us to be able to embed. Now, if we can't for some reason, sometimes we can't because the platform doesn't provide means to embed. There are issues with embed because, in essence, to embed a thing, you have to make that thing, typically you have to make that public to get an embed to work. But using OAuth and maybe LTI, I don't know, doing the content linking, if PebblePad behaved like a consumer, we put an LTI link in there and modify our embed block. And these, I think, will be the things. Who's going to the afternoon workshop? So these are the things I think that we should discuss, tease out there. And then I think prioritise. You know, if you're only going to do one thing, Tony, which thing is that going to be? Which is most important to look at? So let's. So this finishes at 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Badgering. So I shouldn't have come out of the last thing, but badgering. There are, in my kind of naive worldview, I see three ways in which badgering works in institutions. One is, well done, you turned up to 10 of the 12 sessions for this module, you get a badge. And that's because people, you know, that's in a way the kind of gamification part of how many badges you've got, badge proliferation, or issues that are in there. Then there's a slightly more sophisticated version of that, which is, okay, when we designed this module on business enterprise, we built into this module, unit course, what should we call it? Of course. When we built this course on business enterprise, we added in some opportunities to develop your communication skills. And because you passed the business enterprise course, you've demonstrated communication skills, therefore you get a badge. And there's this kind of supposed link. I wonder whether a better way of doing it, and again this is all tentative, is blah, 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 back over here. And you're going to start to get the idea now, because it's not, again, not clever. Make students work for it. Make them responsible for their learning. So, if you want a badge, because badges are precious, they're a limited commodity in a way. So tell us which badge you want to claim. Explain why. You must include evidence from at least 3. It's not just about doing it in class, it's about evidence that you've done this through volunteering or wherever it might be. I mean, again, you would be responsible for the criteria. Explain why, blah, 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 blah. And we see things a bit like this happening. Edinburgh does something similar, where they then have review panels and sometimes they have students involved, and there's a badge award thing. And they become more valued because there are fewer of them. Is an approach. So that's some thinking on the whole badging. I'm going a bit faster now then. And so finally, complementary tools. Plagiarism detection. I wasn't going to spend more time talking about this. Some of you will have heard me say this before. I think that what often happens with plagiarism detection is students write lots of stuff. We're not quite sure where that lots of stuff came from, whether it came from their head or someone else's head. So we contract out the thinking, and I keep remembering, I shouldn't use that word twice. We contract out the cheating to a system like turn it in, and it comes back and says 74. You have to work out what 74 bit means. And it's partly because we get the essay with no idea how to write that. So a more intelligent approach, I would argue, to academic integrity, because plagiarism detection doesn't cope with essay mills and contract cheating, is you try to see what steps the student went through. You just build a LinkedIn template. It's all about templates, that's all I know. And it says, what are you going to write about, and what arguments are you going to posit, and how are you going to support those arguments, and what sources, and why those particular sources. Then you get people started nice and early, and you do the groundwork, and you see that. Now, instead of writing a 2,000-word essay, occasionally you might only write a 1,000-word essay because you've done all this other work. And it's not the only solution. I'm not saying you do that for everything. I'm saying it's part of a mixed bag of approaches, which are more, I think, pedagogically sound, not technically driven. Although, of course, we have a training integration for when you need it. Learning analytics, Tony talked earlier about how lots of the work we do now is geared to give us better data to share with you so you can mash it up on student dashboards and stuff. And then there's Teams, because that was the one thing that we were kind of told. Talk about how PebblePad fits into the VLE. Please mention Teams. There's a wee bit more than that to it. And it's kind of, this JISC in the UK is asking this question. Is Slack the new LMS? And maybe there's a kind of comparable question, because Teams is very much like Slack. And we've actually just shifted. We've been using Slack quite a bit in our business. We've just shifted to using Teams, partly because a number of our customers are using it, and if we use it in our day-to-day work, we get a better understanding of it. But we're kind of thinking, okay, how would PebblePad fit into Teams? And one way I kind of thought about, and we can't, but I'm going to share it anyway, is if you've got a workbook, particularly if that workbook is a collaborative workbook, being able to pop an additional page in there. You know our embed block? Our embed block's about this big. So we know we can add a full page embed block. So we can, because it's an iframe in effect, and we can drop stuff into it. So theoretically, if you have people working on a project, you could drop a project team site into a page there. So all of the communication could be happening within the workbook. Theoretically, because Teams doesn't allow you to embed it. At the moment, there's an issue on their development forum asking for that to happen. It's just a security thing that stops it happening at the moment. But that might be something which happens, and all of a sudden, we could have a Teams. We could presumably limit that particular team site, I'm not sure that's how you call it, to just the conferencing and the conversation part. You had other features in there. The other thing, and I've not got a picture of this, I don't think, is we know we can build a PebblePad portal, PPP, or a portable PebblePad portal, the PPP. And you could take that and you could drop that PebblePad portable portal into a Teams site as a tab and use it to surface things out of PebblePad. A bit like you do with a resource link into the LMS. So if there's a workbook or a particular template or some other information,